weird, and I don't know if it was because I was excited to get into this new series, or if it was just, I don't know, it was just a long week. I don't know how else to say it. And so, we are leaving the series that we were doing, Back to the Basics, and we're entering a new one through the book of Joshua. And I'm excited about this. Joshua, I really like that book in the Old Testament. He faced a lot of battles, and he faced a lot, but he overcame it. And he learned from some of the hard knocks that come in life, and he managed to turn those around. And I can imagine being in Joshua's shoes. You just had this great leader, Moses, who led the people out of Egypt, who'd been called by God to lead the people out of slavery and out of Egypt into the promised land, and then they're outside the promised land, and they're wandering in the desert for 40 years, and the people are all complaining and griping, and God has deserted us. It would be better to go back to Egypt, and just all of that junk. And he was one of the spies, if you remember, that Moses sent forth into the promised land, only to find out that of all the spies, he and Caleb were the only two that said, hey, God is with us, we can overtake these. Yes, there's giants in that land, but with God with us, we can overtake them. But the people would have no part of that, so they rose up, and Moses gave in to what the people wanted, and so instead of going into the promised land, they wandered in the desert, because they would not go take the land. And I wonder what Joshua had to be thinking, because he's witnessed what the people are like. He knows the group he's getting, and yet God's telling him, you're leading them in. Moses is going to die, and you're leading them into the promised land. And as I was thinking about that, I'm thinking about this week. I got a phone, actually Friday, I got a phone call from Sedan Hospital on something I had called them 2 weeks ago about, because I had called them to see if they had gotten my resume, and because I had mailed it to them, and I just wanted to make sure they had gotten it, so I had called and asked, and she just returned my phone call 2 weeks later on Friday. And she's like, I'm really sorry, and this is really an awkward call for me, because I don't really know why I'm calling you. I have your name and phone number, and then on here it says radiology. So I really have no idea why I'm calling you, other than this note sitting on my desk. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the reason why. I had called to confirm that you had gotten my application and resume. And she's like, well, it has not crossed my desk, so no, I don't have it. And then she proceeded to ask me, the only opening I have in radiology is for the director of radiology. Would you be interested in that? And I'm like, my heart sunk, because I'm a leader, but I'm a silent leader. I am not the person who will lead that. So I had told her, I said, maybe, but I would rather be a technologist working than being the leader, but I can do that if that's what you want to really talk to me about. And so she proceeded then to talk to me about the technologist schedule and what they do and how they work it and how their call goes and how the whole hospital works. And so at the end of it, she said, well, I don't actually do the interviews. We're affiliated with Jane Phillips, and Jane Phillips actually will do that, and he's coming Monday, so can I call you Monday and we'll set up an interview with you at that time. So me not thinking, just went, okay, end of conversation. So then afterwards I'm sitting there talking to Cynthia going, I don't know if I'm interviewing for a tech job or if I'm interviewing for a manager job. I'm not really sure from that conversation. And so it's kind of weird. And I'll be the first to tell you, I am a follower. I I feel a lot more comfortable in that role than I do as a leader. God has called me to be your pastor and your shepherd, and so in that way I am your leader, but I'm not the natural-born leader that some people are. I envy those people. I wish I had what they had, because I don't have it. And I can do it, but there are certain personality types that also send me over the edge, and it doesn't take me long before I'm done with it. And so I've learned to deal with them. There was a point in my life where I didn't deal with them that well, especially the steamroller personality. They and I conflict majorly, and I'm the kind who will be like, well, you can roll over me, but if you think I'm moving out of your way, I'm not. I will stand in opposition to you until you flatten me, and then we'll deal with it. Just so you know, my personality, it's changing, but that was my personality when I was younger. So that was something that does not fit well necessarily as a boss. And I understand that, and I recognize that. And so I'm just thinking, okay, if I was in Joshua's shoes, I don't know how I would respond to God. Especially since I spent the last 40 years with these people and I've seen what they're like. I don't know. But what we're going to see in this first part of chapter 1 of Joshua is God gives him very specific commands. And he tells him, if you will follow this, you're going to be successful. But if you don't follow this, it's probably not going to go well for you. And there's a lot for us to learn from that. Not only if we're leaders, but also even just being the follower. There's a lot we can take out of what God is telling Joshua here. So if you'll open your Bibles, we're only going to read verses 5 through 9. Because that gets to the heart of what we're going to talk about. No man will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall give this people possession of the land, which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. The book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. There's some pretty powerful words there for us. And he's giving Joshua the keys to success for doing what God's called him to do. I told you, I don't know if I was in Joshua's shoes if I would have taken that on. God telling me that would certainly sway me to want to do it. But yet it's interesting. Here he is, ready to take the people into the promised land. Now, if you go back to the end of Deuteronomy, where you read what happened with Moses, you see that Moses had laid his hands on Joshua and told him that he would be taking over. And Moses knows, and God has already told him, you're not going to lead my people into the promised land, so that will go to Joshua. But I'm going to allow you to see the promised land, Moses, as a promise to you, so that you will know how I'm going to bless the people of Israel. So he allows Moses to go to the top of Mount Nebo and see all of the land the people were going to take. Moses comes back off of Mount Nebo and he dies in Moab. In the process of that, Moses writes a little, and I guess you would call it, it's called the Book of Law, but it's all about what God has told him, but also what all kept the people of Israel from getting to the promised land to begin with. And so in reference, when he's talking about the book of the law, as we just read, that's what he's referring to, because Moses wrote that, and he told the Levites, you are to attach this to the side of the Ark of the Covenant. It will go with the Ark of the Covenant with you wherever you go. As a reminder, God is who you better be listening to. Stop complaining, quit doing all the stuff you've done for the last 40 years. This is what you've got to do, and I've written this as a reminder to you. Moses then dies, and the scholars all say that there was really probably not much time between the time Moses died and was buried to the time Joshua took them into the promised land. That probably happened fairly quickly. And so here's Joshua taking the people into the promised land, knowing all that's happened. And God and the Lord keeps telling him, be strong and courageous. And I found that interesting, and I had to kind of stop and think about that for a while, because I'm like, here's a military man. Why is God telling him to be strong and courageous? He's probably already that. But as I contemplated, I began to see why the Lord was telling Joshua that. You see, now is not the time for Joshua to be timid. Now is not the time for Joshua to have second thoughts. Now is not the time to go back and concentrate on Moses was the great leader. I'm now stepping into his steps, and I'm not comfortable being in his shoes, so I'm going to doubt it. And I think what the Lord needed Joshua to understand is, if you waver here, the people of Israel are going to waver. You and Caleb were the only ones who said, we can stand up to the giants in this land, and now you're going into that land where the giants are. So if you falter, if you step back out of this role, if you get timid on me, it's going to fall apart. The people are going to rebel, and the people are going to go back to being a slave again, or back to the land they just came from. So Joshua, I need you to be strong and courageous. I need you to step up to the plate and do what I'm calling you to do. Don't back down. Don't shy away from it. You walk in with confidence and you go take the land I told you to take. If we didn't read it, but if you read back another verse or so before we started, you will see that God told him, wherever the soles of your feet touch, that is the land I am giving to you. he's got that promise.